group.
But before we get our panelists for this playoff on stage, let's take a look at this.
An increasing number of global companies are pulling their factories out of China.
Apple is exploring ways to reduce its reliance on China.
So what has triggered the mass exodus?
The problem now is that China is drowning in debt.
The era of miracle growth is clearly over.
The companies are broadening their search. They're looking at India.
The government wants to make India one of the world's biggest economies.
India is growing rapidly, with Germany as a trusted partner in its journey.
Economic reforms put in place by Prime Minister Modi's government have created the foundation for India's economic progress.
More than $14 billion of iPhones were assembled in India.
More than 5 million vehicles were made in the country last year.
Together, India and Germany are crafting a roadmap for sustainable and inclusive growth. The playoff begins.
All right, now can I request on stage Mr. Burzer, board member of Mercedes-Benz Group AG, Mr. Rahul Bharti, Executive Director, Corporate Affairs at Maruti Suzuki, Mr. Baba Kalyani, Chairperson and MD of Bharat Forge, wherever you choose, and Mr. Sanjay Nayar, President at ASSOCHAM, Stefan Halusa, DG at Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. The match referee for this playoff has already taken his place. It's my colleague, Sandeep Punithar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think this session comes just right after what Mr. Baba Kalyani just told us about why India needs to become a manufacturing hub, why it needs to become the factory of the world. And he spoke something very interesting. He said India needs to become a product nation. Now, I have a product right here. This is a haversack that I've had with me for 14 years. It's a German haversack. If this was a person, in about 4 years' time, it could have voting rights. It's got another 10 years of life in it, I think. That's one product. Another product is, I went to school with someone whose father brought the first German submarines to India 4 decades ago. And a few years back, he became the captain of one of our first French-built submarines, and he pulled his submarine up next to his dad's old submarine, which is still going strong, and it's got another 10, 15 years of life in it. So that's German products for you. I want to start by asking Mr. Kalyani this, to take off from where you left in your address. What does India need to really do to become a product nation? That's the first thing that jumped out at me. A factory of the world, but also a product nation.
Well, if you trace the history of any country, trace the history of Germany for the last more than 100 years. Germany was a product nation even 100 years ago. They had many businesses that were making all kinds of things. They had metals business, steel business, armament business, am I right? Of course, the automobile was just starting, growing. But for a product nation, you need 3 major ingredients. Number 1, you need first people who have ambition, who have passion to make things happen. You need availability of material resources, whether it's in the old days it used to be minerals, iron ore, water, shipping area, etc. And third, of course, you need a market for that, a growing market. I think we have all this. The problem in India largely has been that for almost 60 odd years we can't have drifted after independence into a direction, or even directionless I would call, of trying to follow some philosophy that we didn't even understand, central planning or whatever it was. And of course now with Prime Minister Modi, we've been able to correct most of these things and get the mojo back in India's entrepreneurship.
Get the mojo back in India's entrepreneurship. Indeed, and we have seen a kind of focus on manufacturing that we haven't seen in decades, as you mentioned, Mr. Kalyani. But I want to talk about another product which aspirational India really looks forward to. And people who haven't factored aspirational India into their business plans have seen cheap car dreams being ground into the dust. I'm sure all of you have known the story of the Tata Nano, the great car, but unfortunately it was sold as a cheap car and possibly one of the reasons why it flopped. Every Indian wants a 3-point star in their lives. Jörg, what are your plans for India? Mercedes.
It's good to hear that every Indian wants to have a 3-pointed star. That means a huge market. I think one of the most important topics we just mentioned and Baba Kalyani mentioned, which I admire him because he is not only a pioneer in India for manufacturing industry, but also a pioneer, as we heard, for expanding business to Germany and participate also in the German automotive industry. But what is most important is market. We are in India since 30 years. Since 30 years we're producing in India, and 20 years ago I was honored to visit and first met Baba Kalyani in his forging facility. We as a car company which is not producing cheap cars but luxury cars, we need a market to expand. And if you just look at how we expanded our facilities around the world, there was always first a local market in Germany, that's our heritage, but also in the US, also in China, also in South Africa, everywhere where we have manufacturing factories, plants, there was first a local market. The market was developing, and then the next step was basically also exporting and producing it for other markets. So that's what we want to do as well in India. We would like to, and we target for expansion at the local market, and then let's see what happens. Yeah. So if I look back the last 30 years with our manufacturing in India, yes, it was first a very small factory, which followed the traditional Mercedes production system, and now what it's developing together with our R&D facility, which we have in Bangalore, with more than 10,000 colleagues in R&D, to the powerhouse of digitalization and manufacturing. We are basically writing chatbots in Bangalore. We're using them in Pune, and then we're expanding it to our production network. And this is, I would add a fourth topic: innovation. Innovation coming from India for production industry, for production processes, and this makes us confident that the market in India is really developing, also in a segment where we are building cars in.
The market in India is developing for sure, but there's a gentleman to your left who's smiling all-knowingly because he's got plans for not just India, but for the rest of the world. Rahul, tell us Maruti Suzuki's plans for the world. Make in India, make for the world. What is Maruti Suzuki planning right now?
Sure. I think I'll start from where Mr. Baba Kalyani left. The kind of aspiration we have for growth from, let's say, today till 2047, whether it is for Viksit Bharat or it is for our own enterprises, that ambition cannot be satisfied by the domestic market demand growth alone. We've done the numbers. So we need a larger share of the global trade. And why not? India currently has less than 2% of share of the global trade. There is every reason why we can take a much larger share and participate in the global value chain. The reason is that the manufacturing sector has been rightly identified as the single largest lever for economic growth for India, from a developing country to a developed country. It creates many jobs. Jobs are also created in the services sector, but many of these jobs rest on the manufacturing sector. I'll give you a small example. insurance or finance services for purchase of a car. Now they come in the services sector, but they actually are spurred because of the manufacturing sector. So manufacturing sector can lead that journey. Automobiles are a good large chunk, 40% of manufacturing. And therefore, we also have a sense of responsibility. We are the largest car provider in India and export. So when we say make in India for the world, we have targeted to grow many-fold times in exports. So something like we've done 3 times in the past 4 years, and from where we are today, we are targeting 3 times in the next 6 years. So something like 9 times in 10 years. And in exports, there's nothing called market share. It's an ocean. You can get as much as you have an ambition for. So it's an opportunity share. So I think one can go even beyond that. And I would imagine many other Indian companies can do a similar trend.
Right, absolutely. The animal spirits of India's private sector have been unleashed. But Sanjay, we were speaking just before this session about how India seemed to have completely skipped the manufacturing revolution. There seemed to be a erroneous belief that we could ride to become a global superpower only based on the services sector. And I was looking at some figures for shipbuilding, for instance. We are going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world a few years from now, but we account for just 0.06 of the world's ships built. We are number 22 in the list of shipbuilding nations, way, way behind, forget China, but even behind South Korea. Do you believe that the current focus of this government on manufacturing, which is, as we say in Hindi, der aaye par durust aaye, is that enough to power us into becoming the 3rd largest economy? As Mr. Kalyani was mentioning, the contribution of manufacturing has to be 12 times what it is presently. Sanjay.
Thanks for this. I think, you've got some great success stories, but I think we shouldn't get fooled just by the success stories. We have to be honest. As you rightly said, we really missed the boat on manufacturing. I think 15% of GDP, you said, Baba? 15% of GDP. I think I'm not a manufacturing guy, but I come from a financial background and an investor. I think a couple of things that investors and FDI investors like Mercedes-Benz and others should look for, and which India completely missed the boat, is connectivity, logistics, and power cost. And, there's too much of emphasis, tax consistency is not there, too much bureaucracy. I think all that is changing with this government for the last 10 years. I think we've come a long way in changing, like you heard the minister talk about, removal of so many regulations and compliance. All that is soft touch that can happen pretty quickly with a determined government. But what you cannot change overnight is logistics, power cost, ports. I just did a small study as an anecdote that, we've got pharma waiting at Nhava Sheva for three weeks because we don't have deep water draft and ships can't come in. Anyway, leaving that aside, I think this government is now very determined. If you look at the Gati Shakti program, you look at the national corridors that they're creating, there seems to be a much more holistic approach. But still, our logistic cost, last time I looked at it from our investment company, was 18% of GDP is logistic cost. Global standards are 6 to 8% is logistic cost. Okay, our power cost is 6 rupees a unit. I think you can, in America, you probably don't even have to count it, in those kind of terms. So I think we have a long way to go. This government is very focused on doing it, but it's going to take time because this is the hard part of it. The softer parts, compliance, bureaucracy, tax consistency, much better. We've been investing in India as KKR for like 16, 17 years, not the issue. But I just want to take the platform to say we need foreign direct investment desperately. Indians cannot itself finance its own growth ambition because we are savings deficit. It's a fact of life because our government preempts the savings first to finance its own debt. But to welcome foreigners to come there, you need to have a conducive environment, which I think we have. We have a pretty good red carpet there. We can make it easy, but it's not going to work on the numbers till all the logistic projects are played out and the power costs are throttled, which this government is going full throttle. So you've got to give it some time. And you said, there I durust hai. I can tell you, I was at a Chamber of Commerce in one of the EFTA countries came out of it, and I wish the Chamber of Commerce guy who was hosting me saying, I hope you heard something about India. I gave you a reality check and I gave you realistic. He says, yeah, now I've got the governor of Pennsylvania and South Dakota coming in to make in America. So, you've got to compete with Americans who want to get manufacturing. And this is well before the new president-elect, right? This is 2 months ago. So I think we've really got to wake up and do it. And if somebody is woken up, is this government, led by this prime minister and the ministers you heard yesterday. They're so determined, very hardworking. But the fact is, it'll take another 5-6 years. In the meantime, my last recommendation is if we get foreigners like you all to come in, at least we find good partners, much lesser inconsistency in policies. And I'm talking more like a private equity guy, unfortunately. But the fact is, you'll have more predictable returns if you get good partners to start with. Then you can become more independent when you feel confident. So I think that's the way to go about this. And that's what I've been pitching for the last couple of months on the road.
For the benefit of our hosts here, it's Der arrived, Durustai means better late than never. It's taken a while to come, but finally it's arrived. And that is how we reacted to Chancellor Olaf Scholz when he came to Delhi, Stefan. The German government brought out a very interesting document, a 32-page document called Focus on India. I haven't seen this kind of a country-focused approach that any other country has brought out. I mean, Germany has taken its time to come to India, if I can say that. But now it seems that it's firing on all cylinders. It sees India as the next big hope when two other countries have disappointed you in the past. I can mention cheap gas and manufacturing. But that comes with baggage, as we've noticed, right? Now, what is it that you really need to get Germany and India to build this bridge that the minister mentioned here? How to turn this bridge into a physical bridge, like a gas pipeline, but a stronger one?
No, probably we have to talk about shipping then in this case. No, I think you're absolutely right. The new Focus on India policy that has been made by the German government, by the federal government, shows very clearly that for the first time, at least as long as I've been following politics and specifically related to Asia, that there's a very clear, specific focus on a country, and that goes across all different areas of life. So we're talking about politics, we're talking about government, we're talking about industry, we're talking about culture, we're talking about sports and football. So unfortunately, it wasn't football, but when we organized the Asia Pacific conference just a few weeks back in Delhi, we had a national game between the two hockey national teams, because hockey is that one sport where there really is a level playing field between the two teams, and it was great. 2 games, one was won by Germany, the other one by the Indian team, so it was a perfect tie as a start. And now basically this shows that the German industry is now very much looking at, for many good reasons, at India, and I'm just also looking a little bit at the title, India, the next factory. Honestly, I don't think that there's going to be this one next factory that we're going to see, because if there's one thing that we have learned from the pandemic and other supply chain interruptions is that we need multiple factories around the world to make sure that we can serve our markets in the future. And when you look at that, India is absolutely on the top of that priority list of countries that you would look at for many good reasons. I mean, we talked about the market already that needs to be there. We talked about the infrastructure that is improving rapidly. When you come to India, you see that at least I live in Mumbai, so every time I come back, even after a week, there's a new street opening, a new part of the coastal road is opening, and that you can see the improvement in that area as well. And you need talent, and that, of course, we spoke a lot as well. Already that we can find in India, but so there's a tick in the box for India in all of these areas. But there's one thing that I think Santosh already mentioned in his speech before, and that's the free trade agreement. Because to become an industry hub, a production hub for the world, what you need is ease of doing business in the sense of bringing components, raw materials into the country, processing them, and we know that ease of doing business in India has improved greatly, and then export again. And for this, you need a network of free trade agreements. So that would be my hope, because that would bring a new level and a huge potential for Indo-German trade or European-Indian trade if we can really make some significant progress in that area. And that's, I think, what we are looking for, the industry is looking for, that this is going to come sometime soon.
It's going to come. And in fact, Jörg, we were just looking at the air quality in Stuttgart this morning. The AQI is 16 in Stuttgart. New Delhi, where I come from, it's touching 400. We have difficulty breathing in Stuttgart. We have not seen clean air of this kind for several decades. Now, one of the reasons for pollution in Delhi is, of course, the automotive sector. It contributes something like 50% of all the pollution. Electric cars are seen as the future to reduce pollution, have environmentally sustainable transport. How can Mercedes-Benz partner with Indian companies to unleash that electric vehicle future, or do you believe that it's actually a green hydrogen future we should be looking at?
Well, for us, it's electric. It's not. It's right now. It's not green. If you look at the powertrain, it's not green hydrogen. It's electric. That's the way to go. For us, it's a little bit different in the truck industry, obviously, but for passenger cars, it's electric. Well, we were lucky to be early because we're already producing electric cars in our facility in Pune. For example, the EQS, I had the pleasure to be part of the delegation of the Chancellor Scholz in India some weeks ago, and we were driving around with the EQS in Delhi. I wouldn't say this caused better air quality, but if you scale that up, this will for sure have an impact. And we are looking for to expand our market position if the market grows for these cars. Our intention, our mission is to build the world's most desirable cars, also in India, for India, and then let's see what's coming. I want to get back to what you just said. If you talk about exports, obviously a FTA, a free trade agreement, would be very, very beneficial, because producing cars in one country is the one thing. Producing cars for the world in one country is also depending on the framework, for example, the tariff framework. So it would be a big benefit in the future strategy as well, because then India can basically also use all the benefits, the framework, the right framework for growing in manufacturing full scale, a very competitive productivity rates, excellent quality coming out of our plant in Pune, and so on. I just mentioned digitalization of production processes, innovation, and so on. So I think there are a lot of very, very good advantages for India becoming really a powerhouse in manufacturing.
Lots of potential there for India to become the powerhouse of manufacturing. But Mr. Kalyani, back to you again. You spoke about why India really needs to overinvest in manufacturing now. We've kind of missed the bus, missed the boat, and missed the merchant shipbuilding projects. But what is it that India can actually learn from Germany now, given the fact that this is possibly a once-in-a-generation opportunity, that you're looking at the government of India and the government of Germany talking very seriously about collaboration? What can we learn from Germany in the short term, Mr. Kalyani?
You know, we always say in our country, you need to make products like the German products. So fundamentally, what it means is Germany has probably created the capability to make really the best class product. I wouldn't even say world class, best class products. I mean, whether it's their cars, whether it's their machine tools, whether it's their equipments, they really do a fantastic job of engineering and converting the engineering into a product. I used to be on the Bosch advisory committee for 17 years. Bosch also has its headquarters right next door. And I've seen almost every facility of Bosch in Germany and outside Germany, and how Bosch transformed itself from diesel fuel injection to everything else that they do today. It's just amazing. Now that's what Germany can do. It can teach us how to do this transformation, how to do this transition. So I think building a close relationship with Germany, a close bridge with Germany, encouraging German companies to come and invest in India, to produce, opening up our markets, and what Mr. Burzer says, yeah, we need to have some kind of trade agreement with Germany and with the EU. Only my precaution, one word of caution is we need to be very careful that China doesn't use it to dump products into India and get us out of business.
As I recall a certain conversation in a train compartment in New Delhi about a month ago. Thank you very much, Mr. Kalyani, for putting that into perspective. Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts and views. You've actually captured a German word, if I may use that, zeitgeist. You've captured the zeitgeist of 2024, India, Germany, the partnership that could power the next factory of the world. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Catch the next Indian icons. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs at Unlimit India on the 26th of November at 6 p.m.